This is a continuation of the design of bottle 3. It was this carafe style bottle that we're building in two parts. Last tutorial, we built the neck with this curved detail. So now we're going to build the body section at the bottom here and then trim that with our ruled surface to create our label area. So this whole bottom section here is pretty straightforward. It'll be another loft. And we want to start with the segment at the base of this neck detail. So I'm going to my pick tool. I'm going to select the segment. I'm going to select that segment at the bottom, and then I'm going to go to my derive tools under derive here, derive segment. So I'm going to click on that. The top part will be ghosted, so it's still there. We didn't lose it. I just don't need to work with that right now. So that segment I have in the back here, that's just a guideline that I put there so I can snap to that. So I know that's right on center. So the actual line I derived was just this curved shape in the front. And that's going to be the beginning of this loft at the bottom. So this loft is created by all three of these segments. That top one is the one I have already over here. So I'm just going to bring these other two over. And we can talk about how I created them and why. But instead of spending all the time building that now, I'll have them ready to go. So I'm going to do this 30-60 projection. So I'm snapping to the center of that straight line. So I have all these parts, and then I'll just snap over to this center line so I know that everything is on center. Let's go to my fit tool. So these are the three lines that are going to create this loft. So again, it was a little trial and error. This top line, we want that because that's what's actually going to allow this surface to be stitched to the top neck detail. Let's just show it's still there. And then the bottom one is basically an arbitrary decision about how big I want that base. So that we don't want the bottle to fall over, so I didn't make it really small. I didn't make it too large. So I just scaled that down, that half curve. I'm not worried about creating a ruled surface right now. I'm just creating about the aesthetics of this bottom of the bottle. So that's the bottom. And then this one in the middle is the one that I moved around. I made it a little bit larger, moved it up and down, and then it was trial and error to create this loft. So what I came to the conclusion was if I loft this as I have it set up here, it's a nice shape that works really well. I'm going under Drive Tool, and I'm doing to my tangent loft. So this was the shape that I wanted to go with that worked well. That gray area is our neck. So this I thought looked quite nice. But I also have to consider, since I'm not creating a ruled surface for here, I am going to trim that object with this surface over here, which is a ruled surface. So when I trim those two together, that curved shape is going to give us a very definitive label area, which we'll see in a moment. So those are design decisions that we have to go back and forth and make that and see how that's going to work with the graphics. So now I have this surface that works really well. I am going to unghost my neck detail. So now I can put this in the gray and I can see on my parts. I can eliminate the lines. So now I can make some decisions about, so I like this. This looks really good and it's working well together. So the next step is I'm going to take this surface that I showed you over there. I have the guidelines for that right here. And that is just a simple loft. So let's unghost these. View from the top. So those are my segments. I'm just gonna make sure they're nice and centered. They look good. I had built these earlier. Again, it's a bit arbitrary. It's about how much curve I have on these and where they are positioned on that surface. And we'll see why that's critical. So this will be a simple loft. I'm going to grab that top segment. I'm going to grab this one at the bottom. And I'm just going to loft those. And that's a root. Oops. Didn't do it. What's going on? So right now we can't see it, but if I turn this on, I can see the intersection. All right, so this isn't even positioned on center. Aha, okay. That's why we keep track of all these parts here. As we can see now, as we view from the front. Okay, these lines are off center. Okay, so the bottom one looks good. This top one is wrong. So all I'm going to do is delete that. Select this one at the bottom. And I'm going to move a copy of that straight up. And I'm going to lock to vertical and horizontal. So I'm going past my center point because I know it's going to be separating from that neck area. So we can double check that by looking in the right side. It's still a little close. I need that to clear. Okay, barely clears. So let's just move that a little bit more just to make sure that we're going to clear. And I'll show you in a minute why this is significant. So when I create the loft between these two sources, it is going to slice through the rest of this bottle. So let's take that source, this one, and we'll loft that. So now, since we're in this gray mode, we can see what happens. If I take that surface, that ruled surface that I just created, and I trim that away from the bottle, we can see that intersection. That's approximately what our label area will look like before I radius it. So I had set this up before and I had made some decisions. I think this looks pretty good. It gives us a nice label area with this definitive look to it. So I'm going to trim split, but what I want to do is I want to trim split that surface through both of these other surfaces. So I'm going to stitch them all together first. So let's select the bottom one, neck detail, and then this trim part up by the finish. I'm going to stitch that all together. So like we've done this other trim split operation, we want to select the surfaces in the part that we want to keep. Right now, I can't see the part I want to keep for this trim surface. I can only click this outside part, which is the part that I want to go away. So we have to be careful about the selection. Here, I can select what I want. I want the entire bottle, and I'm going to pick up here. I can't see inside. So if we go to our line visualization, not the gray, we can now select those two. I can see inside here, and I'm going to pick that. So we're going to go to the stitch tool. No, I'm sorry, trim split. Come on, trim split, both objects, and no stitching. So we're going to talk about that later. So I'm going to hover around here with my cursor. So there it is. So I selected the surface in the center here, not on the edge. This can be a little confusing. So right now I'm selecting the entire bottle. I want to move around and I want to select that surface in the area in here that I want to keep. So I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to select the rest of the bottle. Now these two things trimmed one another. And if we look at in gray, we can see there is that shape that we have trimmed. What's nice about this, we have this kind of oval shape down on the body, and then we have this slight arc at the top, which is kind of nice. It makes a nice, because this is where the label area is going to go. So that's a nice solution there about how that works and how that fits with the neck. I could have done that with stitch, but I'm going to do this independently in case I want to undo just the trim. It's because these are two separate parts right now. So if I select this one and this one, I can stitch these together. So now this is all surfaces. Again, if we select that and go to our inspector, we can double check ourselves and make sure. It says surface. So that means all of those surfaces are nicely stitched together. Like I had mentioned once before, if this were to say surfaces, something's wrong. Even though it's stitched together, they're not quite lined up, and it's still reading it as separate surfaces. We want it to be all one. Just to double check how to do that. Okay, now so I'm going to work on some rendering, some radius solutions here. So if I go to my radius tool, which is the first one in Derive 3, I'm going to render this little corner right here on both sides, not render, radius that first. And then I'm going to radius these other edges. But it's going to be a little bit of an experiment. I'm going to go pretty big. I'm going to go, let's see, 0.5 on these two. So I'm going to go to my pick tool. I'm going to go to segment. I'm going to select just that segment and the one on the other side. Hold down Shift. I'm going to radius 0.5. Okay, looks a little small. I'm going to go quite a bit bigger. Let's try 0.75. This is an arbitrary decision. It's just an aesthetics. And I'm looking at, see how it's starting to affect my label area. So we're going to get this nice radius at the top. I'm actually going to go back and double check and see where I was on that. Oops. Let's go to my layers. You can see I'm just looking at that radius over there. I think that's about what I did. Okay, that looks good. I didn't quite remember what I did. I'll go with that. We'll just deselect that. So that works pretty well. So now what we can do is I'm going to radius this other area, which is going to frame out our label. Since I have this continuous string of segments, I can use this tool here, which is segment sequence selection. So if I grab here, it's going to select all of those. So I don't have to do it individually. And I'll go to my radius tool. And again, I'm not sure exactly what I did. Let's try 1/8. So this we're going to do at a tighter radius. That's a little too tight. Let's try 1/4 inch, 0.25. Okay, looks pretty good. Gives me a nice soft radius up in here. And since these are not at 90 degrees to one another, we can get away with a softer radius. Up here, I need to soften it a little bit more because it's a very vulnerable point on this bottle. So we don't want that to dent. Okay, so now I have the bottle is complete. I've worked on my radius solutions. We could do this one also. This has been stitched, so I'm going to select that one segment there. I'm going to soften that up because right now that is a pretty hard edge. And we could try 1/4. Let me see. No, okay, so that's too big. That warning will come up. Let's do 1/8. Okay, that's why it would have been too big and would not have worked in all that curved area. But that looks really nice. So we still keep that edge quite firm. I call it firm, where it's not too soft and it kind of goes away. So that looks quite nice. Yeah, so now we can really see that reverse curve pattern at the top there on this neck. So this looks good. So this bottle is just about complete. It's like I had mentioned, I'm only building the first half. So all we have to do is mirror that around to the other side. And that's our entire bottle. Again, like some of the other tutorials I showed about volume checks, we could also do that. We could put this together, put a cap and a bottom on it, and we could difference that and make it a smaller shape considering the wall thicknesses, and we can check the volume on that. That would be the same process that I've shown in the other ones. Okay, so this is our bottle. So it looks quite nice. In the next tutorial, we're going to talk about deriving the actual label shape. This is the label area, and we need to create some clearances. So I'm going to talk about that in the next tutorial, and then bring some art in on the label.